So today I'd like to tell you how something small and simple, a savings account, has the potential to help children and families in the U.S. dream about possibilities for their futures and then get the resources they need to make those futures possible. And to do that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up at a summer camp located on hundreds of wooded acres. There were swimming pools and water slides, ropes courses, basketball courts, campfires. To the average child, it would appear to be a wealth of resources and opportunities. We had special visitors who came to stay with us for days or for weeks at a time from around the country, telling us about the work that they were doing and the things that they were learning. We had college and international students come and spend the summers with us, where they were camp counselors or lifeguards, and I got to see how they were studying, how they were working, what they were learning about, and spend time talking with them. It was really an amazing place to grow up. And so as I was growing up, I got older and started to work. I worked at the summer camp in the summers, and I also worked during the academic year at fast food restaurants, McDonald's. And once I started to work, I earned a paycheck, and at that time, I opened a checking and a savings account at a local bank. So whenever I would get my paycheck, I was able to take it to the bank and make deposits, to be able to put money in my checking account for when I needed to spend, to be able to put a portion of that money into my savings account to save for the future. I also was a pretty good student, so I studied hard. I got good grades. I liked school. I did pretty well in school. And my parents always told me, that as I was growing up, I would be able to work hard. I would get good grades. I would go to college, graduate, get a good job, be able to earn a good living, and take care of myself financially. I was going to be able to be financially independent and have control over my future. And eventually it came time for me to actually live out some of these possibilities. So I eventually applied to colleges. I applied to about 3 or 4 and was accepted to all of them. And being the good 17-year-old that I was, I chose to attend the most expensive one. So up until this point, my parents had told me that I was going to work hard, that I was going to do well, go to college, and I looked around at my environment and I saw everyone else doing the same. I saw college students coming from the summers, from their college courses, telling me what they were learning about, what college was like, and students from around the world telling me the same. And so, of course, I expected that the same would be true for me. I had no reason to doubt that the messages that my parents were telling me and what was around me in my environment were consistent. So I applied to colleges, I was accepted, I chose this most expensive one, and finally in the spring of my senior year of high school, March or April, my dad and I sat down together to talk about how we would pay for college, what it would take to actually send me to college. And this is kind of like the 11th hour of college financial planning, right? The thought had never occurred to me that we would need to think about how to pay for college and what that would take. And of course we know today, with conversation about student loans and about the rising costs of college, that not having that conversation is almost unfathomable to us today. So in March or April, my dad and I sat down. We were in his office at the summer camp, and I had gotten a bill that said, okay, you said you were going to go to college. Now we need your $300 deposit so that we can reserve your space in the fall. And so my dad, sat down, he opened his checkbook, and he had $36.92 in his account. What would be needed, paycheck to paycheck, after the bills, that's what was left. And this was, of course, nowhere near what I needed for this $300, confirmation of my acceptance to college, let alone, what was needed for the $25,000 tuition bill that was sitting in front of me. So I felt kind of panicky because I had no idea that my family, wasn't actually in a financial position to help me make my future possible. So I'm sure that we could have, scrambled together in some way, but, from where I was sitting, it looked like, I was almost $300 away from not going to college. Fortunately, I had been working, I had been getting paid, I had been saving my money, so I was able to write that check from my savings account and to, make that deposit and confirm my acceptance to college in the fall. So it was without that savings account or the money in it, my path through young adulthood might look very different, and I'm not sure if I would be here talking with you today. So there are two things that I want to point out that I think are important in this story. And the first is that when an environment works well, it is so easy to take it for granted. So it was so easy for me to look around and see that all of these messages were consistent, that I could work hard and I could invest in my future without ever questioning whether or not that future was even possible at all or financially possible. There are so many kids who don't even have the privilege of dreaming about possibilities for their futures, let alone actually, being able to make those dreams or believe in those dreams that they'll actually come true. And the second thing is the savings account. Without my savings account or that money in it, my life could look very different. And so this is where I want to turn to talk with you about how something small and simple, a savings account, which is a fairly ubiquitous, fairly inexpensive financial product that has the potential to help children and families dream about those possibilities for the future and get the resources they need to make that future possible. So there's evidence to suggest that children and families, people with a savings account, have better developmental, educational, and financial outcomes at many stages across the life course, from the very beginnings of our lives as a young child to the very endings as older adults. So take, for example, a young child who's about age 3 or 4, and there's a savings account opened in their name. That child is more likely to have better social and emotional development at ages 3 and 4 that prepares them to enroll in kindergarten. They may also be more likely to have better cognitive development, so they're ready for the challenges that school has to offer them when they step in those doors of their kindergarten classroom. They're also more likely, perhaps in 3rd grade, to have better educational achievement, better math achievement specifically. So they're doing better on these important tests of achievement. We know by the time a child steps through their school, into their school in kindergarten, the achievement gaps are wide. And these early gaps, early achievement, is really critical for how children achieve educationally when they get to middle school and when they get to high school. So this suggests that a savings account in complement or in harmony with other early childhood interventions has the potential to help narrow early achievement gaps before they become too wide or too costly to reverse. In, let's say, middle school and adolescence, a child with a savings account is also more likely to dream about the possibilities for their futures and to expect for those futures to come true. They're more likely to believe that they're able to go to college and that they have the resources to be able to do so. And indeed, by the time they get to the point of applying to and attending college, they're more likely to enroll and they're more likely to graduate. They're also more likely to graduate without burdensome student loan debt. So this suggests that they may have money to invest in things like a new car that they need for transportation to and from work. They may be able to make investments in homes or other types of living arrangements. They may be able to invest in retirement, take entrepreneurial risks, and be prepared financially for what young adulthood has to offer. A young adult with a savings account also is more likely to maintain a relationship with a mainstream bank or credit union. And so what this means is that they're more likely to open that savings account. Once it's open, they're more likely to have that savings account, maintain it over time, and accumulate more money in that account. They're more likely to be saving specifically for emergencies. So for me, one of those things might be that $300 tuition deposit, or an unexpected rent payment, medical bill, high winter utility bills. They're saving for these expenses. They're also less likely to carry burdensome rollover credit card debt or to use payday lenders, both of which can be highly costly. And so a young adult who is able to establish this good financial health has a foundation to prepare for life events further in young adulthood. They are better prepared to save for their educational futures of their own children. They're able to prepare for their retirement. They're able to invest in their future and the futures of generations to come. So this sounds really great. We have this great potential with something that seems rather simple. Unfortunately, there are, of course, millions of Americans who do not have access to something as simple as a savings account. The percentage is 31% don't have a savings account of adults in the US today. So that's almost 1/3. So we can think of 1/3 of the audience in this room that might not have a savings account. If you look to the person to your left and to the person to your right, one of the three of you may not have access to a savings account that has the potential for all of these important developmental, educational, and financial outcomes. And there are good reasons for this, because despite being fairly widespread, fairly ubiquitous, there can be limitations, cost limitations to opening a savings account. The average amount of money that you need to walk into a bank and to open that account is $50, and the minimum amount that you need to keep in that account is $300. If you dip below that money, that amount of money, you can expect to have fees assessed to your account at about $15 each time, each day, or each week, or each month that your balance remains under $300. And if we think of the example of, my dad's checking account at $36.92, given the information I just shared, he would not be able to afford a savings account today by those standards. And in fact, he could very well expect to receive $35 insufficient funds fees assessed to his account, which would essentially wipe out anything that remained. So I want you to know also that there are important efforts underway to make sure that these accounts are widely accessible and affordable for children and families. So at the Clinton Global Initiative in 2015, this past June, there were several organizations, the Center for Assets, Education, and Inclusion, the Corporation for Enterprise Development, the Center for Social Development, a number of organizations at the Clinton Global Initiative announced efforts to open 1.4 million savings accounts to children across the US. So this means that children have an account that they can invest in, that their families can invest in for their futures. The Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund and its Bank On initiative also recently released national bank account standards, suggesting that banks and credit unions provide affordable financial products like a savings account to people in the community. So this means that a bank or a credit union should provide a basic account with no or very low cost so that that financial product is accessible. And so these efforts are really critical. They're important because together we can help children and families in the US be able to dream about the possibilities for their futures, and then to help them get the resources that they need to actually make those futures possible. Thank you.